Hello and welcome to the third edition of Reportercast for August 2022. We have with us a man who is almost ubiquitous in three very important British power bubbles. That of Westminster, as he is a long-standing Conservative Party activist, then that of the legal profession. He's a solicitor and director with Rosenblatt Law, dealing with a lot of international and complex corporate cases. And lastly, a City of London finance industry insider by virtue of his job and his passion for cryptocurrency. And he's also an OBE, which is the Order of the British Empire, which was awarded to him by the Queen herself. Unusually, however, thanks to his discreet nature, he is not well known outside of these three circles, and he is not on social media either, though he probably deserves to be. If you want to find him in his natural habitat, look for a guy in red Converse sneakers walking somewhere along the Strand. Alternatively, he may be in a private members club somewhere around the Mall with a sharp suit on, or in court, now that the lockdowns are finished. The name of our special guest for today is, of course, Tom Spiller. Tom, thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much for that very kind introduction, Matty.
And before we get into the questions, I would like to briefly say many thanks to H5 Strategies, an executive and political advisory group based in Bucharest and specialized in the regions of Eastern Europe, Central Asia and Africa. Now, Tom, before we start talking about current affairs and stuff, would you give us a bit of personal background? How did you end up working in the law? How did you end up looking at crypto and caring about crypto? And how did you become a Conservative Party activist?
Oh, thank you very much. So I suppose it's a natural journey from my perspective. So when I was a kid, I always had a very strong sense of public service and duty. And been very proud of my country, its history and its institutions. And I suppose that's what led me to study the subjects that I wanted to study at school, and one of those was politics. It turned out that I was relatively good at politics and history, so I continued studying it at A level and university after that, and one would say I've been studying it ever since, really, mainly because of its sort of basis in group psychology and individual psychology, and of course this country's history. And so from that, I suppose it's only natural that I wanted to study the laws of this country as well, and that's kind of led me into the law. One thing I probably should say about my sort of apprenticeship in politics in my early years, I found it very, very easy to speak to the office of my local MP, which is Kenneth Clarke, a Nottinghamshire MP, and of course great sort of beast of politics from the sort of 80s and 90s, and yeah, it's all a virtuous circle. I suppose my love of cryptocurrency, which I refer to as my only real hobby, kind of spawns from all of that, really. It's just so interesting. And I see it as an enormous opportunity for people of my generation, and perhaps one of the few opportunities left, really. But there we are. It's a bit of a rambling journey, but that's how I think I went from A to B to C.
Right, well, that's quite interesting. And just clarifying, what generation is that? What year were you born?
How? Yes, exactly. How young/old am I? Well, I would say millennial. So I believe the term is geriatric millennial. I was born in the sort of early 80s.
Oh, right. Okay, I was born in the late 80s. And your OBE, how did you get that?
Yeah, I was awarded that. My official citation is for public and political services. I received that, I think, as a result of recognition of the fact that I've been involved in grassroots politics in this country since I was 16 years old. So that's quite a long time now. And I think it was more of a recognition of the organisations and the grassroots elements of the Conservative Party that I was so proud to be part of and to represent as well. I stood for election in an internal party competition, and I was elected to the board of the party, which I was sat on from 2016, so shortly after Mrs. May became Prime Minister, right up to Boris in 2019, Boris just being elected as leader of the Conservative Party. And they were relatively, let's say, eventful years in British politics. And I had a first-hand view as a sort of volunteer, and it was quite the education. There was nothing in any of the textbooks that I'd read before that prepared me for that.
Right. Well, I can already see a memoir coming down the road, but you're just much too young for any of that. So let's move on to the next question. The cryptocurrency market is not doing very well, unfortunately, and you said to me in a previous chat that this is the fourth crypto winter. Now, shall I take this that the market might be rebounding? That your opinion is that the market might be rebounding? Are you one of those people who sees Bitcoin reaching $100,000? Because I'm a skeptic, although I can see a limited purpose for this asset class. And unlike some Financial Times columnists, I'm not in the Ponzi scheme camp either. I do think it's not a true Ponzi scheme.
Yeah, absolutely. Lots to unpackage there. Yes, there've been previous winters before. How many you agree sort of have already been and gone depends on your definition of it. But everybody knows there are ups and downs in crypto. And I firmly believe that as time progresses, there'll be more adoption, both in this country and overseas. And crypto will survive and thrive and have its future winters as well. And that's the fun of the fair, really, when it comes to crypto. I think anyone who gets involved in it thinking it's only ever going to go up hasn't done their research really, and is probably shouldn't be in crypto in the first place. In terms of the Bitcoin reaching 100k, I personally am not that excited about Bitcoin. I am excited about everything else. I think that the Bitcoin phenomenon is driven by two things really. First of all, the American almost pathological distrust of the state and all things emanating from the state. You've seen that recently in relation to just the enormous amount of commentary that comes with the current phenomenon of inflation in America, and that's sort of here to stay, I think. And then the second part of the Bitcoin story really is people from the traditional world of finance seeing something that they can speculate on and sort of piling in to that. I don't think personally, I know that there's a significant number of ATM machines in America where you can walk into a Walmart, plug in your Bitcoin address and withdraw dollars and then go and do your daily shop. But I do think that will be fairly limited to America. I can't see a lot of appetite for that. The Bitcoin alternatives I see as much more useful. They deploy smart contracts, which means you can use it to do stuff such as ticketing, membership, credentials, and what's loosely termed as unregulated securities. So, for example, you could start a business that's entirely online and issue participation rights in that. Although I know the law around that is a little controversial, but yeah, I just see crypto as having a bright future, frankly.
Right. Well, that's quite interesting, and I have noticed commercials, adverts on the Tube network in London selling concert tickets and theatre tickets via blockchain-enabled apps. So you can see changes in society already from this world. It is interesting.
I think it'd be enormous boost for the world of the arts as well. I mean, there's a lot has been said about the democratization of the art world by allowing artists in particular to market straight to a global audience rather than having to depend on whether or not they're fashionable enough to appear in particular galleries. So I agree with what you're saying. I think that the cultural impact of this new technology is potentially huge. I mean, a lot of what gets people excited about crypto and the world of traditional finance sort of eyes the increases in value of crypto greedily. I think a lot of that is based on the fact that ordinary payments and settlements seems to take a long time. Sorry, settlement of equity shares from the world of sort of share dealing seems to take a long time to do with existing technology. Whereas with blockchain technology, it will be fairly quick and instantaneous. I mean, you tell me whether or not speeding up the world of trading shares will make things better or worse. But in terms of the speed at which it could power and speed up existing technologies, I think that's a really big impact that it will also have, and that sort of draws in another tribe of people that are interested in crypto, if you like.
Yeah, that's interesting also because it would increase productivity, I suppose, make things cheaper and more efficient, and the economy is a little bit stuck in the West, at least, because it just can't seem to boost productivity. So that could it could help, but all of this is outside of the speculative bubble, as you say. This is more about uh, technology and incremental gains. Now, one thing I noticed about crypto that I wasn't expecting, that I found quite surprising, was the positive role it played in Ukraine's resistance against the Russian invasion. Everybody in my line of work in journalism was expecting crypto to be the vehicle for Russian money laundering to avoid sanctions. And to be fair, that is possible, but we haven't seen big stories around that. The bigger stories were that the Ukrainian resistance was raising money using crypto, and they were issuing NFTs, and there was also this sort of crypto-inspired uh, movement of the NAFO fellas, the dogs that certain people online use to make fun of Russian propaganda. So all of that I thought was, broadly speaking, a good thing for Ukraine and a good thing for the crypto community. I just wonder if you heard any commentary around that.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, lots of interesting stuff there to unpackage, Matty. So I think it's really interesting that crypto's wild adolescence has given it this bad reputation, such that, as you say, the knee-jerk reaction from media is to look for the bad things, in particular this idea of money laundering. Somehow, perhaps through a lack of understanding of the technology and how it interfaces with the existing banking system, that somehow it can only be used for bad. Whereas, the reality is, from the beginning of modern banking till today, you tell me which financial system has facilitated more and larger criminal money movements, the world of crypto or HSBC? Well, sorry, I probably shouldn't name a bank there.
That's a right to reply.
Yeah, or the or the modern world of banking. I, of course, mention HSBC because they were particularly reprimanded over what was seen to be their facilitation of movement of money for Mexican drug cartels.
Yeah, with the Mexican stuff, no, that's true. That's well documented, so I think we can get away with it.
Yeah, I didn't mean to pick on them. My point is that it is ridiculous to say to a new market, a new technology, a new subsector of the economy, your standards must be far higher than the standards of the essential banking system, which the state props up, facilitates, and allows to take enormous rewards from the economy for its position in society. It is ludicrous to expect the world of crypto to be wholly whiter than white when we don't ask those standards of people who are far more part of society. I think in terms of Russians trying to evade sanctions using crypto, it's ludicrous. I'm afraid it's ludicrous. As an idea that the liquidity in the world of crypto is not sufficient to justify any one of the top 20 or 50 richest men in Russia or richest people on the sanctions list, allowing them to somehow liquidate their holding, their real life cash or assets into crypto and then get it out somewhere into the Western banking system. That's simply fantasy island. In terms of the positive role that crypto has played in Ukraine, you are absolutely right. And I, for one, was very, very proud to have donated some Ethereum to the Ukrainian army's official donations address. And the Ukrainians are very far ahead. They are a tech-forward country, and they had been embracing crypto for many years. And they were able to demonstrate in terms of, ration packs, radios, helmets, what those crypto donations had done for their army, for their country. So that was just a fantastic, and again that goes back to what I was saying about speed, frankly, of the way these things can operate, and the underlying blockchain technology as a absolutely potentially dominant payment system. It just shows how much good it does. But I think a broader point there is that crypto, and particularly stable coins, which I hope your readers will have heard of. I'm sorry, they're listeners, of course. This is an audio format. These stable coins are used the world over, particularly in developing countries, particularly in countries where there is economic failure, on a mass scale. These stable coins exist in spaces of state failure. So, for example, Argentina, terrible currency inflation. Stablecoin, very, very popular there. In Ukraine, the stablecoin USDC was so popular, and its value is $1. So it was so popular, and people needed it to replace the financial system that had been destroyed by the Russian invasion so badly that they were prepared to buy it for up to $1.10. And where the local financial system had crumbled because of hostile Russian action, the world of crypto stepped in and helped those people. It's the same in Turkey, it's the same in Nigeria, it's the same in all these countries. There is this phenomenal sort of grassroots democratizing aspect to it. I could go on forever about this. I'll stop. You get my point. But yeah, I think there's another really interesting point that you made, which was a crypto-inspired movement. So crypto is inherently cultural, and I would just say there are sort of three tribes in my view that are attracted to crypto. The first is the international sort of element, the unbanked of the world, the people who need something that is not their native currency. There are the bankers of the world who want better technology so as to do whatever they're doing, positive or otherwise, faster, at higher speeds. And then there is everyone else, frankly. And I think crypto itself is effectively a form of social media. The community aspect to it and the sort of social interaction part of it cannot be overstated. And for that reason, I do think crypto is very different. And I don't think it should be treated the same as a currency or a share or any financial instrument that's come before it. Sorry, that's another very long, rambly answer, mate. But hopefully, I've answered the question and said something of interest.
No, you did, and it's actually something that I want to expand a little bit on, because there's a fourth tribe being attracted to crypto, and that's central bankers and regulators now, but not for the same reasons. And I think mostly they're looking at these speculative versions of crypto rather than the fixed version stable coins. But of course there are proposals for regulating stable coins as well. Now CBDC, central bank digital currency, is under consideration by all the major central banks, at least at sort of rhetorical level at the moment. What do you think? Good idea, bad idea, end of crypto as we know it?
I don't know. I think that CBDCs will never replace crypto. I don't think they can compete or should compete with stablecoins either. And I would describe myself as a skeptic in terms of, are they necessary at all? The reason why I think stablecoins are good is that they provide, to the extent that electronic money, electronic banking, and transfer of cash isn't, that we have today is not sufficient. I mean, it demonstrably is, right. It's been used for years and years and years to very, very high degrees of success. The extent that that's not, no longer acceptable and can be improved upon, then stablecoins do that, and that is the private sector getting enormous levels of investment from sources of wealth, and they can provide that service, on a private basis, and the population will benefit from that, and the government can regulate it and benefit from tax revenues and the rest of it. That would seem to tick all the boxes that you would need to tick in terms of CBDC. I don't think we need a CBDC. As someone who, as I said, I was born in the early 80s and have seen various infrastructure projects commissioned by the state, I really don't see why we would try and take on those projects on a public basis when they've already been done privately. I don't see there to be anything to be gained there. I don't think the state would do it more effectively than what's already been done. In terms of my general skepticism about it, I can see how there's a lot of talk at the moment about central banks wanting to use it at a macro level, as between themselves and the banks that they license. But I just, perhaps it's my political biases, which are very much on the record. I just don't think that the government will be able to stop there. I think we've seen already, and this is an extreme example, of course, but the totalitarian state in China is already using programmable money to effectively reduce people to serfdom. And I'm not saying that would happen here or actually in any other country, but it only takes, it is a slippery slope. And I can see how the state would, were there to be another event on the scale of COVID, I can see how voices in Whitehall would quite reasonably say, we need a stimulus, we need to get it out there now, let's use programmable money issued by us. That would then create a system where, it is spread a lot wider than it was originally touted, to be used for. And at that point, the genie's out of the bottle, and you could potentially have all kinds of interference in people's access to their own money.
Right. Well, that's interesting. It's a very interesting point. The mission creep of CBDC, inherent really in CBDC, because it's programmable. But isn't there a counter argument there that precisely because all of these totalitarian dictatorship style governments are doing it, shouldn't we be doing it in a democracy, just not necessarily to implement it straight away, but just to have it as a technology ready to go in the back pocket in case, the yuan becomes the CBDC of the world somehow, because their economy is so big and important for global trading. So I suppose that would be rational, wouldn't it?
That is a very big idea there, Matty. Let me think about that. So potentially, I mean, I don't want to come across as someone who is overly skeptical or paranoid, but I just am skeptical of it because I can see how mission creep might happen. Do we need it to counter a potential dominance of a digital yuan? It's interesting. I mean, as at right now, no. And as all these, rise of China narratives go, actually we're okay today. That doesn't mean we'll be okay tomorrow. As at right now, crypto largely was born in America, and the dollar is effectively its currency, really, despite the fact that it's enormously popular in Southeast Asia. But that is effectively derives from the ubiquity of the American dollar. If things were to continue and China was to continue to rise and America continue to have relative decline, then yeah, I can see how you might argue that. And I don't have a slick all encompassing answer, but I do just say I start from a point where I'm slightly skeptical of institutional mission creep in any state apparatus.
Totally fair enough. And now about another side of cryptocurrency that you're involved in. Unfortunately, a lot of this cryptocurrency gets stolen by hackers, and when this happens, investors tend to go to the private sector, IT specialists, and specialized law firms. And you've been involved in a couple of these recovery initiatives. I just wanted to ask, have you seen much progress on the part of the state authorities trying to help people recover their stolen coins? And if the police isn't helping, what should be done about that?
So yeah, that's something that I come across in my practice as a lawyer. I think the reason why, so that there is hacking, you're absolutely right. There's ingenious software designers who can find a backdoor in practically anything and use it to transfer monetary value in crypto from the rightful holders to themselves. But actually far more of it is simple social engineering frauds, which it's just so much easier to do it because crypto is internet inherent, right? So, sorry, internet native, and really it's just people who are taken in by incredibly sophisticated scams who actually perhaps just don't really understand what they're getting involved in. In terms of law enforcement in this country, there's an enormous amount of knowledge. There's a chap called Nick Furno who literally wrote the book, who provides a lot of training to every security service in this country that is interested in making recoveries. But it does seem to me that the internet is effectively currently being policed by the American authorities and, to a lesser extent, the Australian authorities as well, who've both dedicated significant resources to this. I'm not really in the position of sort of advocating policy, but I just say, crypto is different. Crypto is not money. Crypto is so beware people who tell you that it is, frankly, and crypto is high risk because it takes place in this incredibly abstract environment of the internet where you can't speak to someone, you can't verify their bona fides. I mean, the technology is trustless, so that's not where problems occur. The problems occur inside your head, effectively, when you're duped into doing something. And I'm afraid fraud very much predates crypto by a very long way indeed. So it's our inherent ability to be fooled by bad actors, I'm afraid, that generates the bad headlines.
Well, certainly, but when you lose your money from a bank due to fraud, and a lot more fraud happens in the traditional banking sector than in the crypto sector. So, as you say, fraudsters would steal whatever they can get their hands on. But at least the banks have funds to compensate people for their losses or part of their losses. Do you think the crypto community should start helping people who are victims of fraud as well somehow?
So I have two answers to this, right? So part A and part B. So first of all, yes, the community does do a significant amount to self-police and try to help people. So you will see this when there's a big hack. As soon as it's discovered, you will see an exchange, tweet addresses that have had money stolen from and the addresses where the money has gone to. You will see the community of exchanges and custodians react to that and freeze those accounts and do whatever is in their power to return those funds. And actually, to an extent, it's not perfect, but to an extent, the community is quite good at self-policing. And I don't know if the traditional world of banking can act as quickly as that or as effectively as that. But separately, no, I don't think there should be any safety net. I think the important thing about crypto is that it is very, very different. And when you step over the threshold from, the real life world, the world that and that has existed for many, many years, into this new world of crypto, there is no safety net. And the FCA is very clear. It insists on very high risk warnings being placed on all things crypto, and that's correct, I would say. And one should not expect levels of protection in that world. It's all going to be about self-education. We can't. I heard someone say this. I can't remember who it is, but I am stealing it because I'm not crediting them with it. But they said, we can't much if we're going to democratize money and the payment system in this way. It won't be a good democracy without significant levels of education of the participants, and that is my view. I have to agree with it.
Learn by doing, tough love, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely right.
Right. Well, let's see, because I have to say sometimes I'm totally on board with that, but on some other days I see some tragedies and I think this just breaks your heart. But it's not my place to judge. So the next question is, would you talk a little bit about a specific scam or caper that you saw or were involved in, and what happened, and how much money was stolen, how much was recovered, and all of the spicy details, please.
Okay. A very understandable request. So obviously, I have to give a very boring sort of preface to this and say, I have to respect the confidence of my clients, so I can't really talk about things that aren't in the public domain. I think probably the best and most interesting answer I can give you is to talk about pig fattening. Have you heard of this?
I have not.
Right, so...
Except in the Romanian sense, mind you, which is the literal sense.
So it is a business model of the international criminal community, which is new. So you will be aware of, I think Netflix popularized the Tinder swindler. So that is known as a romance scam. So the pig fattening is the next iteration of that business model, which uses crypto as well. So again, very much behavioural, very much psychological, and tapping into the state of mind that people, the open state of mind that people have when they're on the internet. It's less guarded than they would be in normal life. And basically, in this scenario, there's a romance scam initiated, so contact is initiated between the organisation and the potential victim. There's lots of promises of the future and a golden life together. The criminal organisation sort of proves itself to exist as an individual, which is just not the case. Often it's they run sort of call centres with specific desks that sort of maintain relationships with specific targets. And then slowly, the organisation starts saying, oh wow, I've just had some amazing successes trading crypto. This is so great. We're going to have this golden future ahead of us, and I'm going to pay with it with my crypto gains. And hey, anyone can do it. I don't really have any expertise in crypto, and it's just sort of slowly salted in. There's no push. There's no traditional request to transfer funds on the basis of some spurious sort of personal reason. And then over time, they introduce them to the website. So there's a fake website that's been set up to appear as a trading platform that the fake lover sort of says they've been using successfully. It's of course just a total fraud, but the victim then starts trading small bits of crypto. The website tells the victim that they've been incredibly successful and made enormous amounts of profit, and then basically that the criminal will wait for the victim to suggest cashing in, and at that point they'll say, yes, great, let's go off, let's sail off into the sun together and start this life we've been dreaming of, and at that point the victim will be charged an enormous amount of money to withdraw the funds that they believe they have accumulated, and often, you know, the gains that, let's say they've been told they've accumulated $1 million of gains in crypto trading. You know, if you believe a lot of the hype on social media, that's quite easy to do. You could do that over a short period of time. So they are then asked to pay a fee of $100,000, say, in order to receive the money. And of course, they pay the money and everything goes silent. It's all gone. So that's a very sad story, of course, but perhaps the most interesting one that I could think of to tell you, and one for your listeners to be very, very wary of.
That is quite interesting, in fact, because it's as you say, it's emotional manipulation, it's a personal relationship, and the promise of easy money, easy riches, and all of that is based on human flaw, not necessarily technological flaw. But what legal recourse would a victim of that sort of scam have? If they approach you, Tom, help me, I've been scammed, I'm a fattened pig, what would you say?
Yes, it's very unfortunate terminology. Although it derives from China rather than Romania. What would I say? Well, straight away, I would get the full facts, get an analytics report, identify where the money has been sent to. You know, be it cash or be it crypto. At that point, I head straight to court, and the English courts have shown themselves very, very, very willing to be of assistance to victims of these types of scams, particularly involving crypto. I would relatively quickly obtain freezing orders and bankers' trust orders that would allow me to trace the source of the funds. And as in one particularly famous case, the English courts, the case of Ion Sciences, a victim that had acted very, very quickly was able to freeze assets that remained on, I believe it was Kraken. If not Kraken, it was Coinbase. It was certainly a household name crypto exchange. They're able to freeze that money and obtain judgment for the return of that money, and they got their money back. So that's a best case scenario, of course. However, you know, in some cases there'll be a lack of some kind of information, or perhaps a delay in acting, which renders it impossible. So it's not all gravy, as they say, but the quicker you move, the higher your chances of recovery.
Right, so once you feel like you've been scammed, never mind the shame or never mind the hope that it's just going to fix itself. Just run to someone who knows and try to get your money back.
Absolutely right.
Right, good. Now it's time to give another little thanks to H5 Strategies, an executive and political advisory group in Bucharest, specialized in Eastern Europe, Central Asia and Africa. And also worth mentioning, there's no interference from them in the content of the podcast, and there will never be from any commercial partners of Reporter.London or Reportercast. Now back to the questions and the legal stuff. We were talking before, and you said there was some sort of judicial decision in the UK that was quite unique and important, recognizing that people in the UK or people in general have a legal claim on the crypto asset in their wallet or on their computer. Could you elaborate that a bit and say what it means, you know, for people who hold crypto?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as I said, there's been numerous examples of the courts in this country being of assistance to victims of scams. I think the very first case, I think, would be the AA case, where it was simply recognised that, you know, if it walks like a duck and talks like a duck and acts like a duck, it's a duck. Crypto didn't easily fit into any of the categories of property that we have in English law. You know, it's not a real estate asset. It's not a tangible good. It's not IP. It's monetized code, which is very difficult actually for a textbook to get its head around at the fundamental legal level. However, the flexibility of our law meant that the judges, as I say, were able to use and apply the duck analogy. And here we are. I mean, most recently, Professor Sarah Green, who again wrote the book on the law of crypto, and is a law commissioner in this country, has recently made some proposals for a new category of property that would recognise not just crypto but other, you know, new technologies that have yet to be born, you know, would fall within that category of effectively digital property, and that's recognising the importance of the services sector, you know, the online e-commerce, internet economy, and the internet native economy, and it is you know, sincerely hoped by people such as me who are fans of UK PLC that actually this legal step, these signals that, you know, Parliament, the judiciary, and our financial sector are all sending, is enough to make Britain a very pleasant and sort of appealing place to do business if you are part of the crypto sector. At the moment, we are rather sitting on the sidelines with a huge amount of activity going on in America. But it does strike me that as the single European country with the largest amount of investment into our fintech sector, that actually, whilst it has been frustrating waiting for these developments, they do seem to be here now, and it does feel as though the tide is turning, and actually Britain is likely to be a major player in the crypto sphere within the next few years.
Well, I wouldn't mind that, because God knows we need economic growth. But one problem with crypto in general is that so far the regulators and the government and so forth just don't seem to be happy with the extent to which the source of crypto funds can be proven for the purposes of money laundering checks. And that sounds like a pretty major issue, because there's just no way you're going to be allowed, you know, maybe in the future to buy a house or carry out a serious transaction with crypto unless you can just prove where you got it. And I just wonder, you know, I've heard a lot of talk about unhosted wallets, hosted wallets, and so forth. And what's the situation? What can be done here?
I think I referred a bit earlier to, you know, the wild teenage adolescent years of crypto, and in my view they are over or almost over. I see now a time of middle age for crypto. Every time I speak to someone at a crypto exchange, or, you know, a significant actor in the sector, they seem to be people with enormous credentials and experience at blue chip banks, in terms of governance, in terms of risk management, in terms of, you know, investment and sort of capital requirements and the rest of it. I do feel like crypto's grown up very quickly as a result of the money that poured into it over the last few years. And yeah, I think most people at the FCA or Treasury will have first heard of crypto in the context of ransomware, and potentially money laundering. I believe, you know, certainly in my view, the first time it was ever really made famous was in relation to Silk Road, you know, the criminal marketplace where people were able to buy illegal goods using crypto as payment. But I do see a change in that attitude. The Treasury have indicated that they won't impose sort of unreasonable levels of regulation on unhosted wallets just because they are not hosted by, you know, a well-known crypto exchange. In terms of how can we gain legitimacy, well, the state is slowly moving and slowly getting its act together, but what it needs to do is what it does with the banking sector. You need to regulate the major players. You need to say, in political terms, for the right to receive all this money in fees, and believe me, Matty, it's a lot of money in fees. You have certain responsibilities, and we expect you to do X, Y, Z, and it's not really fair to tarnish an entire sector with sort of a bad reputation if you're not asking anything of it. I think the time has come. I think there are very sophisticated actors in the space now, and I believe that they will behave in the best interest of the market and consumers and the British public if they're allowed to do business.
Right, okay, well, things to look forward to then. And I'm going to ask you an uncomfortable one now. In your experience, what jurisdictions in the world are the most permissive or lax in terms of anti-money laundering regulations for crypto?
I mean, there's it's the usual suspects, I'm afraid. There is, of course, there's the famous example of Iran using embargoed oil to mine Bitcoin. Russian crypto exchanges in Moscow are the center, the financial lungs of the international criminal industry of ransomware. I think where else in terms of the real worst case? I mean, North Korea is a major player in the hacking industry, as you would expect. It's involved in lots of different kinds of crimes. So why should it not get on the crypto bandwagon? There are various offshore island jurisdictions as well that really are not interested in policing any activity. They just want the income. I won't name them, but
Right.
But you probably know who they are.
Okay, fair enough. So I suppose it's these offshores, of offshore islands, as you put it, that might be tricky for our companies, because I don't see licensed British banks doing business in North Korea anytime soon.
That's right. I mean, we need when the authorities put up the regulatory perimeter, they will be able to exclude. It is not beyond the wit of man to exclude these jurisdictions, and it is not. Basically, when they put up their perimeter, it has to be appealing for people to stay within it. But also, it would be very easy because of the nature of the blockchain to identify where people are, what jurisdictions are sort of receiving bad money, if you like, and they'll be able to hopefully filter the bad actors.
That's interesting.
The big problem that arises with the blockchain is that it's transparent but anonymous, but it's only anonymous if you want it to be. So, for example, at one end of the spectrum, you can actually buy a wallet address which is your name. You can choose to identify yourself. Also, within a crypto institution's own commercial analysis, it could decide that actually it wants to collect a significant amount of KYC on every person that opens an account with them, and the same for anyone that their client wants to send funds to. It is absolutely possible for that to happen. It only has been anonymous to the extent that it has been in the past because of a lack of regulation and a lack of engagement. So there's really no reason why these classic sort of risks for money laundering should persist in the future.
Right, and just to be clear, KYC means know your customer. So things like address, source of funds, occupation, and so forth.
Absolutely, that's right. I'm not talking about fried chicken. It's all about the sorts of documents that, frankly, someone like me or someone in the police force needs when they're trying to help someone.
Okay, good. Next chapter. Now, you knew we would be coming to this. Tory politics. you're a Tory, you're in the party, you're a regular at the Carlton Club, which is an exquisite club among really nice clubs in that part of town anyway. And I suppose at this point we could say pretty certainly that Liz Truss is going to be the next prime minister, although you never really know. But I'm not going to be a bad sport and ask you how you voted.
Thank goodness.
More broadly, though, it feels to me there's a fundamental split on the right, just the same as on the left, between the manager type of politician and the visionary type of politician, as Lord Frost has put it. And we have managers with Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer, and visionaries with Liz Truss, Boris Johnson, and whatever you think of him as a politician, also Jeremy Corbyn. Now, do you agree with this? And is a visionary really the kind of leader that the country needs?
It's quite interesting. So I suppose what Lord Frost is talking about really is the distinction between sort of charismatic individuals and, everyone else effectively. He is right in that you do need someone to articulate a full view of politics. I mean, recently we've had the Brexit event, and that is very much a turning of the page and starting of a new chapter. So one would say actually someone needs to take a step back, look at the country from a very strategic geopolitical perspective, and work out what can be done differently. And I suppose that's what he means when he says visionary. He's talking about someone who can articulate a full sort of place for Britain in the world and a way of running our economy, effectively a new version of a social contract. Sometimes that is necessary and sometimes that is not. I think someone once said this about reforming the NHS. You can propose all the reforms that you want. There has to be a period of stability in order to consolidate and enact. So it won't always be a case that we need a firebrand on a soapbox or whatever the social media modern day equivalent of that is. But I do think that in times of crisis, things matter more to people. Sort of leaders and their narratives are very important in giving people hope and things to look forward to, and to justify actions if they're going to be painful or not. So yeah, I suppose I would agree with that. I mean, one thing that we've always had in this country is cabinet government, and I do think that history tells you the fewer the people that are effectively enfranchised in that cabinet, the worse it goes. So I think that it is important to have what David Cameron used to refer to as a deep bench, a lot of talent in government, because that will only improve the outcome, and that will only improve the work that the state can do in any particular parliament.
Right, okay. And another thing I wanted to ask is about implementation, because there's no shortage of visions and proposals, and Boris Johnson was full of ideas and optimism and proposals, but he didn't get most of them over the line. He got a good few, but not most of them. And it's all well and good to blame the woke academia or the obstructive deep state or whatever the cliche might be. But in the end, you had Tony Blair and Lady Thatcher who had vision and were able to implement it. And why does it seem so hard these days to bring about changes?
Wow. We're getting really deep here.
That's a big one, yeah.
Wow. Well, God. So I suppose there's two bits to that. The first is there is this ubiquitous feeling that nothing's happening for the better. And I was always told never bash the media to the media. but and that's probably a very wise rule. But I do think that there's a media business model these days. Angry people click more, as they say, and catastrophizing again draws attention to things, and I think that derives from the new nature of the media. The internet, social media. I mean, the importance of Twitter now to journalists cannot be overstated, and I do think that from around 2015, 2016, which coincides with various political events, the pitch and tone of the media has only gone one way, and I do think that will always certainly make people think that there is no progress in terms of implementing visions. I mean, you're absolutely right. Boris had this enormous vision, which would have taken a long time to implement. I think he's had his time cut short, but Tony Blair, his vision was more education of one certain kind will absolutely boom the economy, basically. And I'm from Nottingham. I can tell you that the money that was pumped into the universities in Nottingham brought about an enormous positive change in life in that town in the Midlands. I'm not saying I agree with Tony Blair's policy. In fact, I disagree with it. In terms of some of the ambitions that he had, but that took a really long time to implement. And Boris's ambition was effectively, certainly as I took it, to rely less on the southeast of this country and try and redistribute opportunity so that people in the north of this country and in the Midlands had a better shot at things, but not just that, deprived sort of coastal areas as well. So I suppose I'm kind of, as I'm sort of articulating what he's doing, what his ambition was, I'm starting to realise just how ambitious he was. I mean, how many years would it have taken to implement that? Sadly, more than he got the chance to do. But I can see places like Ipswich, places like Teesside, Darlington around there. I can see how he has had an enormous positive impact, even in a short time. So yeah, perhaps Boris has achieved more in a short period of time than we've given him credit for.
Well, let's say he has. But also another question about the Tories now. The polls are not looking that great, and you're on the inside of the party. You have meetings and stuff, and I just want to ask: is the party as a whole aware of the uphill battle it faces in the coming election, which is not that far into the future, and does this make the current leadership contest a bit self-indulgent? Is it the case that a public battle such as this might be detrimental actually to the Tories?
Well, I might have received an OBE, but I'm still a private citizen, so these are my views as a fan rather than someone who's authorised to speak on behalf of the party. But I would say it is to be expected that, given the macroeconomic and macro-political background of today, that the party government would be down in the polls. Is it self-indulgent or some way negative to have a leadership competition now? I mean, there's a significant number of people inside and outside of the party that wanted a change in leadership, and there is only one way to effect that change. It's via the rules, and the only question really, once you've accepted that premise, is how long does it go on for? How much scrutiny do you want to subject the candidates to? And I think every time I now read a news report from the political media about the competition, their main comment seems to be, it feels like it's been going on forever. Well, good. I mean, these are the same people that would be complaining of not enough scrutiny if we were doing anything different. So I don't know. I mean, it wouldn't have been my choice of timing, Matty, but I'm not the one who made it all happen.
No, fair enough.
The only thing that I say is that it is good that the candidates are being subjected to such a public competition and such high levels of scrutiny.
Right, well, fair enough. That was very diplomatic. Anyway, one last shout to our sponsor at H5 Strategies, an executive and political advisory group in Bucharest, specializing in Eastern Europe, Central Asia and Africa. And finally, the final question, we're running a bit over time anyway. Thanks again for your patience. Kemi Badenoch, I was hugely impressed, both by her style and the intellectual rigor and the directness and the sort of thick skin and lack of fear really on her part. And I just wanted to ask: is she huge with the Tories now? Is everybody banding around her as the next Prime Minister, or what's happening? The next after the current one, obviously.
Yes, absolutely. You prematurely unseated the next leader. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. She captured the imagination of an enormous number of people in this country, inside and out of the party. She's a very promising, intelligent lady, and I sincerely hope and believe that she has a very bright future ahead of her, and I would be shocked if she wasn't given a prominent role in the next government.
Right, so we'll be seeing a lot more from her then.
Let's hope so.
Right. Well, on that note, Tom Spiller, thanks very much.
It's very kind of you. Thank you for having me.
All the best.